So in this video, I wanted to speak about the back half of our final project, content, information, formalization of meaning. This goes hand in hand with truth conditional semantics and the premise of T conditions as we explained in the prior video. So formalization of meaning hopefully would bring to mind that what semantics is, essentially what its overall project is. It's preoccupation with the way that words mean, the process of how a word would mean, as opposed to asserting that a word is simply this meaning. We want to know the reason behind it. We want to know what makes it so. So the premise of the first video was exploring the means by which societies and discourse communities deploy what we know as conditioned truths on which meaning could be constructed. And a lot of it depends upon that three-tiered system of syntax, semantics, and pragmatics, and how all three aspects would need to be met in the affirmative in order to achieve T conditions. And how all, two people can speak within the same discourse community, share the same psychological reality of T conditions, and disagree. That is still permissible. If I tell you the meeting is at 2 o'clock on Tuesday, and you correct me and say, "Oh, that's been changed to Wednesday at 4." I have frames of reference for all of these words, so I can adjust my thinking to accord to the information that was asserted in your point. So that can happen, and that it allows for syntax, semantics, and pragmatics to occur, specifically if I view you pragmatically as a trustworthy individual. So you don't have to always assume agreement, but there has to be that ability to adjust, to inform, to adapt. Where it doesn't work, it is if you have no starting point. If we use the houses on fire example. If I say instead firehouse is the on, it's not likely that with that syntax flow that there is able to be semantic understanding. You might still be able to parse it out, but there are so many other variables that would not guarantee a quick tertiary meaning three part check process of syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. And it could also be another example where it wouldn't work would be, well, what is house? What do you mean by house? Huh? What? And then everything crumbles, right? So all three of these elements, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics, are what would have to be achieved in order to expose T conditions. But we want to get further into how meaning is formed. We went to the level of explaining that three-part theory and how it exposes conditioned truth, but we want to also think further about the meaning of formalization, or the formalization of meaning itself, the meaning process, the means by which meaning is constructed and practiced. And that's what we would be covering here. So at present, we are now trying to build upon that tertiary three-part slide, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. We want to explain further how, for every sentence of English, we get those T conditions from the meanings of the component pieces of both the sentence itself, but also the syntax. And really, if you look at it this way, what we explained in the prior video is the broad, vast process, but now what we would consider the macro element. But now we're getting into the micro, the basically the conversion of how we get from one step to the next within that three-part structure. And specifically, we're focusing on how syntax converts to semantics. We're not really getting into pragmatics as much, because that, as we know, is an evaluation or a judgment of the quality of the speaker, and then we veer rather quickly into moral relativism, and that's a whole other branch of philosophy. But I do think that as far as your social media projects are concerned, there is definite overlap with pragmatics in terms of verifiability or trustworthiness of what we look for in information, and how does social media obfuscate, confuse, complicate that, and how does it have the potential to enrich it. So that's a whole other conversation. But if you were to examine the semantics, to perform a semantics, okay, to perform a semantics of an individual component expression within a sentence of English, means essentially that we have to take the idea behind the word that exists in the abstract, and we have to clamp it or project it or point to X in the real world as a representation of that idea in a given time and place, right? So a simple two-word sentence like this, Trump tweets, deploys the fundamental characteristics of subject verb, subject predicate, present tense verb. We can associate Trump as the subject performing that verb, the positioning of the subject before the verb. A two-word sentence like this can actually be quite complex. So to perform a semantics of that word Trump, meaning we hear the word and then we have to find its referent in the physical world. What is Trump, right? Trump exists as an idea in the abstract, as any word would, but then we have to point to X in the real world as a representation of that idea in this given time and place. So that would be performing a semantics. And then we would do the same for tweets. We would, have some sort of an idea of tweets, presuming that we understand the context of microblogging, social media, phone use, and short, direct microblogged messages to wide arrays of followers. Even though there are no doubt people who who might choose to take that to mean a bird and the sound that a bird makes, even though, incidentally, what is the icon of Twitter? A bird. So it takes on the notion of Twitter itself, and the ecosphere, the digital ecosphere, is playing with that idea that exists literally of a bird on our shoulder singing a lovely tune. Because, as I'm sure you know, we all hear lovely tunes on Twitter. So the semantics that we perform of the individual entities of the whole sentence that we have received, Trump tweets, we perform the semantics of each component expression in order to verify its meaning. And we've done that after, having it presumably pass the syntax test, because it's the sentence doesn't read tweets Trump, which can provide maybe a little bit more ambiguity. Usually an identifying tag like that, says Trump or something like that can exist, but we would have some preceding text to clarify what was precisely said, even though we can now say Trump tweets as a definitive act without necessarily knowing what specific tweet we're talking about. So the sentence that we have received here, Trump tweets, we have presumed that it is passed the syntax test because of the position of the word, subject before the verb, subject before the predicate. But now we need to go through the work of verifying the meaning of the component expression of each term, and then putting them back together, assembling them back together in order to verify the conditioned truth of the whole sentence. So performing a semantics of Trump would mean taking the word at face value as a component expression and understanding the idea behind it, and then being able to clamp that or reconcile that with its reference in the real world. And they would repeat the process for tweets. And that's how we perform the semantics of each component expression, so as to be able to open up the conditioned truth of the entire sentence. So really the whole is the sum of its parts. So we're trying to figure out, in a way, how the syntax enables us to perform the semantics, and really it's the first two steps of that tertiary three-part enterprise. So some important questions, excuse me, how to make a constructive theory that obtains this result for us. Again, this being the result, the conditioned truth of Trump tweets, meaning that I can speak those words to you as another person in standard formal English, and you would know what I mean. We would pass those three-part tests: syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. How to make a constructive theory that obtains this result for us. What are the meanings of Trump and tweets, such that combining them together can yield for us the truth conditions of Trump tweets. So the conditioned truth that we would share, I'm sipping coffee, as speakers and listeners within a language, the psychological reality of T conditions that we share. So a few backstory points. We've already seen that the everyday word meaning is vague and ambiguous in a number of ways, because the process by which a word means something is subject to many different pairs of hands that can twist and contort and manipulate the term for its own purposes, for the entity's own purposes. So I promise you, I didn't write this presentation this week. I wrote it months ago, and I wasn't trying to predict anything. But let's have a conversation. In one sense, the meaning of the noun phrase, NP, noun phrase meaning a noun, that we would define a noun as any word that could take on a plural or possessive S. That's how we would define it in linguistics. In grade school, we're taught person, place, or thing, but philosophy and language really makes that a messy process of discernment. What is a thing exactly, and why is a person not a thing? Etc. So the simplest way to go would be to just take any word in a language that can take a plural or possessive S. And noun phrase is when you have a word like that, and then you precede it, you put it what we call an article before it, either an indefinite article, or an, or a definite article, the, meaning the is referring to one specific thing that I'm guaranteeing that you would be able to know or agree with me about. If I say to you, do you want to go to a game? It could be a countless number of possible games from which to choose. But if I ask you, do you want to go to the game? I am presuming that you know the specific game to which I'm mentioning. And that limits our options to change how the meaning is portrayed, not as a process of you making an indefinite number of calculations, but knowing specifically the one that I'm talking about. So 4 years ago, in one sense, the meaning of the noun phrase, the president of the USA, changed about 4 years ago. It went from meaning Barack Obama to meaning Donald Trump. Now, denotation or reference is a process of, in the physical world, we can point to X as existing, as a representation in this time and place of the concept, right? The president of the USA, this is a term that over time changes. If we were to do it in 1963, in February of 1963, that would be John F. Kennedy. If we were to do it in February of 1994, that would be Bill Clinton. If we were to do it in February of 2001, that would be George W. Bush. I mean, so in times and places specifically, we point to X as a representation of an idea. The idea of the president hasn't shifted since 1799 in terms of American discourse, right? It hasn't, the idea of the president has always been a paradigm, a pattern, a space, a role that to this date 45 men have occupied. They've stepped in and they've functioned as that person, as that role in a given time and place. So it's true to say since January of 2017 through today, Trump has been that representation. And from January 20 of 09 through 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or I'm sorry, 11:59 a.m. Eastern Standard Time of January 2017, Barack Obama was the representation, the extension of that idea. So the idea of the president has never shifted, but the representation, what we point to in the real world as a representation of that idea in a given time and place, that has shifted. And boy, is it shifting this week, right? So really, that's what I mean by this point, that the noun phrase has essentially stayed the same. The role of the president and all of the responsibilities appertained thereunto. What we expect of the president in terms of the job description. That role hasn't shifted, but the 45 men who have occupied it since 1799, those have shifted such that we can point to all 45 of them in given times and places as extensions of that idea in a given time and place of the world. So that's what this slide is all about. So that's, the way that I just described it, the idea which hasn't changed and the extension which has changed. The idea, remember idea, I, that's intention, I, right? Intentional meaning of a noun phrase is the idea that hasn't shifted or is not meant to have shifted, despite whatever X looks like in the real world, right? So the idea is what is referred to as the intention, the general concept behind the phrase, which determines for a given time or situation what the extension of the phrase is. So the intention, the idea of the president is the person who holds the office, regardless of when we are looking throughout history, whether or not it's Rutherford B. Hayes, Buchanan, Abraham Lincoln, McKinley. There are countless examples, or countless. It is something that can be counted. We've had 45 of them, but the point is that the idea of the president is supposed to transcend all of those individual examples, because regardless of who is there at a given time and place, they are a representation of the idea which is not meant to have shifted. So the extension example in a given time and place of the intention is what the intention picks out in the real world as the representation of that idea in this given time and place. So let's just continue to wrap our heads around that. Extensions shift. Intentions are not meant to. So the meaning of a noun phrase can be broken up into its extension and its intention. So can we do the same thing with our sentences is pretty much the question. And we can say so. Yes, we can definitely say so. We might take the intention of a sentence to mean something like it's conditioned truth. For instance, if I were to say Trump tweets, okay, if I'm to say those two words, so if we were just to process that, the idea behind Trump, right? The idea behind Trump is that he is representing the role of the president right now. When I say that to you, I am presuming, if we go back to the past video, through the psychological reality of T conditions, that you are able to hear that word Trump, and it signifies the office of the presidency, the the role of the presidency, right? The function of the presidency, such that Trump is the extension of that idea in this given time and place. Uh, when I say the word tweets, right? Presumably, you would have the idea of tweets as a present tense form of microblogging. You are speaking the word, tweets, and thereby revealing an idea behind that word that we don't see, of microblogging in a social media context, predominantly over mobile technologies, right? So the word tweets in and of itself is you pull that back to reveal the idea at work beneath the word. So the tweets in this given time and place, who knows, maybe in the year 3500, we don't know what that word is. We have nothing to pick out in the real world. But at least since 2010, tweets is a word that we can point to this, mobile-based technology, this Twitter icon, as, this process of microblogging in the real world, as an extension of the idea of instantaneous microblogging, communication, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really what's meant by performing a semantics. You take the idea behind those words and the intention, and you clamp them to the extension, right? So if the intention, the ideas behind the words, are what we are conditioned to view as true, we have been conditioned to view the process of microblogging as the idea behind that word tweets. We have been conditioned to view the office of the presidency as the idea in this given time and place behind that word Trump. So if the intention of a sentence would be its T conditions, then the extension of a sentence would be its truth value. Meaning, truth exists in two domains. It exists as the conditioned ideas behind the words that we use, but it also exists as the valued practice of those words in a given time and place. So, philosophy has debated for years what is truth. In the world of semantics, in the world of language analysis, discourse analysis, we try to create a binary response, that there is a conditioned and a valued sense of what truth is and how truth is. And 2020 has been a real litmus test of that, particularly for words like mask, right? Science, virus, multiple things that the ideas of them we've never really questioned before, but now it's become a lot more acceptable to debate the veracity of the idea behind the word in practice. So maybe further analysis can show that history has routinely done that, but perhaps in 2020 it's taken on its own sense of urgency, right? So the extension is what X picks out, the idea picks out in the world for a given time and place. So the conditioned truth, our shared awareness of what the president is, the office of the president, the idea of the president, would determine for a given time or situation that Trump is the valued truth of that extension, at least until January of 2021, right? I mean, the crucial idea that the extension of a sentence is the truth value, that's just one of those weird ideas that we would have to get used to, right? So in your notes, consider it that way. The truth is TC and TV, conditioned truth and valued truth. And the conditioned truth is the intentional meaning, the ideas behind the words, and the valued truth is the extensional meaning, which is what those conditioned truth ideas pick out in the real world for a given time and place. So if you go back to the first video, when we perform a semantics after verifying syntax, that's what we're doing. We're reconciling conditioned truth and valued truth. We are taking or picking out X in the real world as a representation of the idea that we have established or have been conditioned to view as such with our fellow speakers. So, the general picture, the intention of X, which, Trump, for example, the intention would be everything we know about the office of the presidency, right? So that we are able, that's the psychological reality of T conditions, that we share an awareness of the office of the presidency as a frame of reference such that we can associate Trump as an extension of that idea in a given time and place. So that would cover A and B in this paradigm. That we get into, then we would repeat the process actually with this word tweets, right? That tweets, the intention of tweets would be a kind of concept or a definition that we would presume to have conditioned as true, that we would both agree would represent this process of microblogging for a social media landscape, on a social media landscape. That with that shared awareness, we could then point to the word tweets as an extension of that idea for a given time and place. So we would be reporting that, subjecting each term in that 2-word sentence, Trump tweets, to that process, right? Verifying the meaning of the component expressions and then doing it for both words in tandem as a sentence. And to perform a semantics means that we verify that the whole thing is true if and only if we verify that in this given time and place, those words are extensions of those ideas. And if so, then hearing those words, speaking those words, Trump tweets, because we've proven the conditioned truth of the intentional meanings behind those words, we can therefore acknowledge the value truth of that extension. And that's why we have, where we go at with phase 4 in this general picture. What is the point of all of this? So as we will presently see, you can actually build a decent theory of how meanings can compose to yield conditioned truth of sentences, T conditions, by paying attention to extensions. We call this the compositionality of extensions. Meaning, if we look at these words, Trump tweets, as extensions of the ideas beneath the words, if we verify what it is about those ideas that we agree with, we can therefore acknowledge that the extension reveals the conditioned truth or shared ideas or intentional meaning beneath the words. So that's a theory that, my gosh, in the past 2 years has taken on some strain. And within the house of semantics and art discipline, we have to really attend to that. And in many ways, that's why in this course, this project is dovetailing with the social media project. So towards a compositional semantics based on extensions. So when you see this double bracket like this, that's meant to denote the extension, the word, or in a given time or place in the real world. The representation of an idea that we might not see, but that we're supposed to have a shared awareness of. The extension of X, right? The function from X to its extension. In other words, if X is the president and everything we know about it, the function from that to its extension, Trump, in this given time and place, we would denote that extension with double brackets as the time and place representation or extension of that idea. So the compositionality of extensions, we've broken down the meaning of a sentence, or a noun phrase in this case, into its extension and intention, right? So in that sentence, Trump tweets, we see that it exists in two domains. The intention of that sentence would be the office of the presidency, the figure who is fulfilling the office of the presidency, is performing the process of microblogging. Those are the two ideas that exist beneath those two words. But Trump tweets, in this given time and place, are extensions of those ideas, right? So recall, however, that our semantic system must be such that the meaning of complex sentences or complex expressions should be derived from the meaning of its component parts. So we still have to verify in that sentence, Trump tweets, the component expression of Trump performing semantics, clamping the intention to the extension, repeating the process for tweets, and then doing it for the whole structure, right? So the extension, Trump tweets, would reveal the conditioned truth of the words, of the ideas beneath those words. So the extension of a complex expression should be derived from the extensions of its component parts. So in a picture, the double brackets, you remember that means extensions, right? So the extension of Trump means that we affirm its existence because we have a shared awareness of what the office of the presidency is. The extension of tweets, or the extension tweets, affirms its existence because we have a shared awareness of the process of microblogging in real time. So because of the intentions that exist behind these two words, we are taking these extensions, clamping them to the intention, the idea behind it, and verifying the meaning of each of these as component expressions, which then lets us do the whole thing to reveal the truth. In this case, the valued truth. These exist as valued truth of the conditioned truth of the ideas behind those words. So the extension of a predicate, particularly tweets, is essential here in the computation, because without it, we don't know what the entity is doing, right? In order to make the picture above work, the extension of the predicate tweets must be such that combining it with the extension of Trump yields the extension of Trump tweets, which is the value of true. So tweets in isolation would need someone to do it, or we would have to know who or what is doing it. And if the entire idea of that sentence is Trump tweets, is we want to know that the president right now is doing something in microblogging fashion in real time, that's why we have to connect the predicate to the other entity in that sentence to get the whole thing, right? So how do we model this? Well, we know the following. We know that the extension of Trump is essentially revealing the conditioned truth that we know about the office of the presidency. So essentially the extension equals the value truth of Trump. That's what's signified by this. So the extension is the truth value right here. We also know, or we've also proven, that the extensions of these two words reveal the ideas of the person fulfilling the office of the presidency, performing the action of microblogging in real time. So we verified the truthiness of that. So we can basically confirm that the extension of tweets, meaning the intentional meaning, the idea of microblogging in real time, plus the entity that we've proven exists, equals truth. The extension of tweets the extension of tweets, meaning the process, what we know of that word, tweets. The idea beneath it, the intentional meaning, is microblogging in real time. But that extension of that idea is combining with Trump to yield truth. So the extension of tweets is like a device that takes Trump as input and yields truth as output, meaning those two words are revealing that Trump is the one who is performing this action. So the extension of tweets is like a function. Because again, extension, tweets, in order for that extension to be verified, in order for that extensional meaning to be verified, we have to confirm that the intentional meaning, the idea beneath that word, means shared microblogging in real time. And that's the conditioned truth that we're confirming to therefore understand tweets as an extension. So because we've done that work, we combine it, or we take Trump as input and reveal the truth of the whole structure. So, again, the process with Trump here is able to be obtained because we have a shared awareness of the office of the presidency. That's what verifies the truthiness of this extension. So by doing this, we're able to take or regard this as the input that merges with that act of tweeting. So the core idea, the extension of tweets is a function from entities to truth values. Value truth is what extension of meaning is all about. Value truth is when I can say Trump tweets to you here in November of 2020, and you are able to have, through psychological reality of T conditions, an awareness of the ideas beneath those words to pick those two words, Trump tweets, as extensions of those ideas right now. And the truth is revealed if and only if that entity tweets. And we're able to verify the semantics of that because in this given time and place, tweets means that, and Trump means that. So disregard this talk of final exam, the final project. And in fact, yeah, I'm going to alter this. So the last slide, I'm going to alter this a little bit. So don't take this to heart. I will actually give an announcement that speaks a little bit further about that. But just focus on the content for now. And definitely reach out to me if you have any questions.